Much of this was about leadership for Rand Carthon, and there's a lot that goes on in the Tennessee Titans building, especially the big personality, I would say demanding personality, of Mike Vrabel, the longtime head coach there. And Rand Carthon is someone who has dealt with big-time personalities before, a Bill Parcells disciple, and really someone who is seen as a bridge builder among all facets, from players to executives to coaches. This is someone who can stand up to the best of them and also do it in a soft, gentle way. Really, really skilled personnel executive. Won out as the finalist over Ian Cunningham from the Chicago Bears and Ryan Cowden, the in-house candidate from the Tennessee Titans. And as far as that leadership goes, was noteworthy that Amy Adams Strunk, the owner, said in this statement announcing this hire that she was impressed with his, quote, natural leadership abilities and ability to connect with people. That, first and foremost, is what Rand Carthon is.
What is up, Titan Nation? So we all heard the news this week. The Titans did hire a general manager in Rand Carthon, formerly with the San Francisco 49ers and other teams as well. The guy's got a pretty good resume for only being 41 years old. But we have an awesome guest tonight. He's been on the show a couple times before, and we're going to go ahead and bring him in here and get started. Please tighten up that like button. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. We've been on a tear on Twitter. It's picking up on YouTube, and I appreciate all the support greatly from all of you. What's up, Cory?
I just want you to know I'm charging double my fee tonight since this is a newsworthy show.
Okay. All right, man. I'll cash app you or something.
Double of zero is zero.
Yeah. So, man, I appreciate you coming on, dude. You're always so gracious with your time, man. I think this is the third time you've been on with us, and it's awesome. It's awesome to have somebody on that's been covering the team for so long.
Yeah, are you calling me old?
Definitely not.
Well, I am,
but
that's okay. Listen, I get to talk about football, and somebody actually wants to hear what I have to say. So it's a great night.
Right. And I always say to myself, I can't believe there's, over a few thousand people that want to hear me talk about Titans. I'm not, some huge, gigantic YouTuber or anything, but the fact that a few thousand people out there want to hear me ramble on about the Titans is pretty mind-blowing to me. But
it's flattering, right? Yeah,
definitely.
Flattering.
So let's get into it, man.
Okay.
The Titans, they hire Rand Carthon.
Mm-hmm.
Your initial thoughts?
I love the hire. That's just number one. I love the hire. I liked their finalist list. I thought Ian Cunningham was also an outstanding candidate. And I like that they went outside the organization for a number of reasons. I think that, look, I've promoted from within, and sometimes it's the way to go for sure. But I also think that to bring in new ideas and new ways of doing things, you need to go outside sometimes. And like I said, there's a number of other reasons, but bottom line is this. He's qualified completely. He's a guy that I understand has a lot of respect from a lot of people. And if there is a team that the Tennessee Titans and Mike Vrabel want to emulate, want to be like, to me, it's the San Francisco 49ers. And so to have one of the architects of that team to work with Vrabel to put that together, I think it's a great combination.
Yeah, I do too, man. And we were messaging back and forth the other day, and they hadn't hired a GM at that point. And you were saying, you think they were going to stick with Cowden or somebody internally.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty surprised by this hire, man. I really am. Especially at the GM position. I really thought they would stick with somebody like Cowden, or somebody like that inside the organization. And I think it shows that, to me as a fan, I think it shows that Amy Adams is willing to.
Oh, she wants to win. She wants to win.
Yeah.
There's no question she wants to win. And I think, what it told me is that she wasn't BSing us. when she talked about the relationship she wanted to have with the GM. And it's not just going to be Vrabel running the show. Okay. There's going to be a collaboration. You've got two strong people, and they're probably going to, collide sometimes, but
Right.
you can collide with people and work together at the same time. And, Carthon knows that Vrabel has a bigger seat at the table than he used to, but I don't think he's afraid of it. Whereas if Cowden had gotten the job, what would we all think? We'd all think he was just a pawn for Vrabel, right? And that may not have been reality, but that would have been the perception as long as Ryan Cowden was the GM and Mike Vrabel was the head coach. So I think they avoid that perception. And I think there's more respect on the position. I think there's more respect on the hire, personally. I think that it's looked upon that they did their homework. And I think that, one of the things that's exciting to me is the NFL has this accelerator program, and two of the Titans 3 finalists came from it. They had a chance to talk to Ian Cunningham and Ron Carthon before they ever had an opening. So they knew that those guys were people they wanted to talk to, and that's what it's all about. And then those guys had to go and impress them and get the job, and they were able to do it. So I think it's some diversity that the Titans needed on the football side of their operations, and I think that's a strong move as well. But like I said, I'm excited about the types of players that I think he and Vrabel will work to bring in together. And as I talked to one personnel man who told me that, one of the strengths of Rand Carthon is he knows scouting from both the college and the pro side. So he's not going to he doesn't just specialize in one of them. He's going to know how to get players down both avenues. And look at the 49ers roster. They've done it.
Yeah, they really have. I wonder how much he had to do with the McCaffrey trade. Like, if, as far as his involvement in it at all.
I mean, he's number 2. I mean, he's right there with Lynch, but that's the GM's decision. He is going to pull that trigger, for sure. But I'm sure, there were conversations with Rand Carthon, about making that move. How much? I don't know, but he used to be director of pro player personnel. Now he just overall was director of personnel. So he played a substantial role in it. And, you see that aggressiveness to go get a player still in his prime, and it's paid off for San Francisco.
It really has. And another thing I wanted to ask you too, and you've, like we said, been around the team for a while. You've been covering the team. As far as like J-Rob and Mike Vrabel's relationship, do you know anything as far as like how they worked? I mean, didn't Vrabel have a lot of say-so in what J-Rob was doing?
Look, all I can say is what I know of the way things are generally done. All right. When a GM signs a deal, it usually includes in there they have final say on the roster. Okay.
Right.
That they have. It's like head coaches. I talk about this all the time. People want the team to fire his assistants. Head coaches have control over their coaching staff. It's just that simple. You to take that away, they quit. Look, Mike Mularkey forced his firing, and J-Rob forced him into that position because he wanted to get rid of him, and he pulled the Terry Rubisky card. And this would be the same way. If Vrabel wanted a bigger seat at the table, which is pretty evident, right? You agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Amy can't go to J-Rob and say, I know in your contract it says you get final say of everything, but we need to amend that. I need you and Mike to work as a consensus together, okay? So you can't just make all the decisions by yourself. You and Mike need to work them out. She can't do that. J-Rob's not gonna say, okay, cut my power, right? And so she's got to make a clean cut and get somebody else in who's willing to work with the head coach. As far as how closely they work together, you always saw them together on draft day, right? You always saw them sitting side by side. But what I couldn't get over, and look, this is just me reading what I see. All right.
Right.
When Vrabel first got here, they're dancing on stage together. They're hand in hand. They're chummy. And then the last 2 years, I don't know if I saw the two guys look at each other. I mean, they would sit down, they'd answer questions, then the few times they were together, and then they would get up and go in opposite directions. And I was like, this is not the same relationship that it was. That doesn't mean that I'm saying that they were fighting or that they hated each other, but it's not what it was when they first got here. When they first got here, they were two peas in a pod, two kids at the lunch table together. And I don't think they were sitting at the same lunch table anymore when it was over. That's just my perception. That's not anything I know for sure.
Right. And I wonder where it took a turn, if that's the case.
Yeah,
you know
well,
what
I mean,
like,
I think yes, I think you could look at, was Tom Brady a factor? I don't know. I think Julio Jones was a factor. Okay, that's obviously not a Vrabel guy, and I have to think that AJ Brown was a really big straw on the camel's back. I mean, Vrabel pounded the table that he wasn't going to get traded, and he's been a good soldier, saying that they agreed on it. But when you're as adamant as he was that he wasn't getting traded, and then also, what has he said about Jeffrey Simmons when asked about Jeffrey Simmons' future? He's under contract. Okay,
yeah.
So that's the way. And Vrabel was a player. He knows what it's like to be hammered under a contract. All right. But he doesn't care. All right. They're under contract. And he knows they've got Jeffrey this year. They've got him next year. And they got him the year after that if they want. And if he doesn't want to play, then it's on him. But if he wants to negotiate under those circumstances, they'll probably negotiate under those circumstances. But I think the AJ trade, that, if you are a race car driver and somebody took away your fifth gear, you'd probably be pretty hacked off.
Yeah.
And I think somebody removed his fifth gear because that was bad.
Yeah, and Daddy Hot Drops, he says it's an easy guess. Watch Vrabel's reaction at the draft, and we all saw that video.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And that was so telling to see that, man. I was so
it was
shocked.
Like a beat at the poker table. Just
get him. It was wild, and I think if and like you said, this is all observation, what you've seen. You've been at the pressers, you've been in the locker room, you've been at all these different events. This is what you've seen. People in the chat, don't take this as a definite word of what happened or anything, but I'm sure you have a decent feel, being in there all the time and stuff like that, as far as that goes.
Well, I tell you what, I think I told you this last time. COVID was really hard on us for doing our jobs because we weren't inside the building nearly as much. So this year we got back inside the building, and it's helped a lot. Yeah.
I bet you that was terrible for you guys. Like,
it was horrible.
I mean, it was terrible for everybody, but especially in your line of work when
it's bad
you're
for the
having
fans.
to do all this Zoom stuff. Yeah.
Because like I always say, the most valuable time in the locker room is not when the camera's on. It's when you're just sitting there talking to dudes.
Yeah.
That's when you get to know them and you get to figure out what's going on, some of that stuff.
And speaking of the locker room, and I wanted to bring this up too, and since we're on the topic, after that loss, were you were in the locker room after the
No, I wasn't.
Game?
No.
Okay.
Wait, which loss? The Texans game?
Yeah. The Jags game. That was
the Jags. No, I was not in Jacksonville.
Okay.
I was not there. No.
And I saw a lot of footage from it, the media guys interviewing them all. And, man, Jeffrey Simmons was just absolutely demolished if you saw that video.
Not used to losing.
No, they're not. They're really not. I mean, this franchise is not used to losing. Not in the last, 5-6 years.
Mm-mm.
And I think that's why it was so shocking when she fired J-Rob, like that. But like we're talking about earlier on in the show, like it's, her hiring Carthon like she did, I think it's really showing that she wants to win. And with the new stadium coming and all that type of stuff. I mean,
everything
Amy
she's done has
wants to
shown
win
she
a
wants to
Super
win.
Bowl.
Yes. Now, I don't agree with when she fired John Robinson, and it's got nothing to do with John Robinson. It's got with what it tells your team, and it's like throwing a big boulder in a lake,
Right.
I mean, it takes a while for those waves to settle down. And you saw the team pay the price that week. I mean, wasn't that the first Jaguar loss? I mean, and the team came unhinged. And I'm not used to seeing Mike Vrabel teams come unhinged. So I totally put those two things together. And I think the world of Amy Ammons Strunk, and I think she's done an amazing job. And I agree with you that she wants to win a Super Bowl hands down. But I don't agree with what she did. I think she cost her team some victories without question. I think you could have still gotten to this solution at the same point. And I understand what she said, but you can't just think of John or yourself. You got to think of the 53 guys. You got to think of the coaching staff. How am I going to impact these people? And so I think that was it. What do you think of the fact that the hiring comes on John Robinson's birthday?
On his birthday, I tweeted that out today. I mean, coincidence or not?
No, it's not. It's total coincidence. I mean,
I think so too.
I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I mean, yeah,
Right.
I guess you could have announced it yesterday. Who cares? I mean, I don't hate John Robinson, but I don't feel sorry for him. He made a lot of money. He won a lot of games. He made some good decisions, and he made some really bad ones. And ultimately, the really bad ones caught up to him. And I always said it. You can blow this first-round pick, but the moment you start losing, chickens are going to come home to roost. And that's what happened.
And everybody knows about, there's a lot of speculation about the AJ trade and how it all went down. We released something on our network about it, and it got a lot of play and stuff. But the bottom line is there was a few things that happened that led to the
AJ pushed a lot of buttons to make that trade happen. He's not innocent at all, but at the same time, Deebo Samuel was pounding the trade button last summer. Who's he playing for? San Francisco still.
San Francisco.
And he's still playing really well. Okay.
Yeah.
So, that's when sometimes you have to work it out. And that's part of being the boss. It's recognizing what you've got and saying, we've got to make this work. All right. This guy, I mean, because we talked about it last year. When Derek went down, I said it when it first happened, and I was treated like a pariah for saying it. A.J. Brown was more important to the Titans offense. And it was totally proven out over last season. They were so much more explosive when he played. He meant more to their passing game than Derek meant to their running game. And go ahead and call me whatever you want. It's absolutely true. It's still true, okay? Because they ran the ball without Derrick Henry. They couldn't pass the ball without A.J. Brown. They struggled to pass the ball all year this year.
Yeah, it was absolutely terrible. And that's why a lot of people are questioning. I personally think that Tim Kelly is the front runner for this OC thing. Yep. I know you do as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are questioning that because his title is passing game coordinator, and how much did
he got a title? Yeah.
That's the mystery though.
Yeah.
How much involvement did he actually have in, the passing plays?
I don't know, but I know this. The offense is what Mike Vrabel wants it to be, regardless of who the offensive coordinator is. And that's what people have got to understand, that regardless of who is over there with the visor and the clipboard or the whatever, the card, he's calling the plays that Mike Vrabel wants called. All right. I mean, look, they may disagree, but they make that plan all week long. And Vrabel's like, this is what we're going to do. And Kelly's and Downing or Kelly are like, okay, we want to do this, this, and this. And Vrabel's like, okay, I like this, but we need to do more of this. And they go, yeah, we're going to do more of that then because you're the head coach. that's the way that stuff works. And look, I know everybody hates Todd Downing. He gave them every reason to hate Todd Downing. But Eric Coryell wasn't going to call good plays with that offensive line. You can't run plays with the quarterback on his back. Your quarterback, Vrabel spelled it out. When your quarterback gets hit, you turn it over and you get hurt. That's what happens. They lost. They're not in the playoffs because they turned it over. Tannehill didn't finish the season because he was hurt. And that's all because of the offensive line. And that's all the offensive line that J-Rob put together. So it all starts there, and that's why J-Rob's out of a job.
Right. I mean, the offensive line was absolutely terrible. I mean, it's one of the worst offensive lines. I don't know. I mean, they've had some pretty bad, the 2-win season and stuff like that, but it was pretty rough, man.
Look, since I've been here since 2003, and one of the staples of this organization has been offensive line play. And there have been some bad ones. This is right up there. I mean, especially when Taylor Lewan went down. I mean, the one they finished the year. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, the problem was you had no depth. I mean, you didn't have the bodies because, Petit Frere, do we think he was ready to start? Probably not. Dylan Radins can't beat out anybody. All right. And he finally gets out there and gets hurt. Aaron Brewer's 280. Dennis Daly can't stand up without falling over and missing somebody. I mean, and then you didn't have anybody good enough. I mean, I'm going to repeat myself. All summer, all camp, we said the Titans need another experienced offensive lineman. They need another experienced wide receiver. I'm just a guy. You're just a guy. We could all see that. And the moment somebody got hurt in both spots, they were toast. And that's what happened. They were toast on both of them. Now, they had more than one injury, but the Taylor Lewan domino was huge for this football team. Huge. And when you didn't have anybody who could reasonably replace him, I mean, it just made their offensive line a joke.
Speaking of Taylor Lewan, he's been extremely active on social media lately.
Lots of Pittsburgh Steelers uniforms.
Yeah. Very, very weird. And he's been so active. It's been just all types of stuff. It's been wild. And it's like he knows that his time is up in Tennessee. And it's just what he's been posting and things like that. This was one of the things he said today, or like on Bussing with the Boys. He said this maybe a couple days ago or something.
Yeah.
But how is Roger Schaffel constantly injured on the Titans, then goes to Buffalo and is perfectly healthy and balling out?
He's been hurt in Buffalo too.
He was, and it just surprised me that Lewan's talking like this all of a sudden and being, what do you think about that? Is it?
Well, he could have said the same thing about A.J. Brown. Constantly hurt here, goes to Philly and rips off 17 games. Now, $25 million may have something to do with that as well. But we saw the same thing, and that's concerning, right? I mean, that's got to be a concern. I think, look, Taylor's not dumb. We've been talking for him about 2 years about his contract and about his future. He wants to be with his team, but he knows that he's missed 2 of the last 3 years, and he's due like $14 million next year in base salary, and there's no way they're going to pay him that. No way. And so he knows he's done, right? Yeah. So, I mean, dude, there's no scenario, and I don't hate Taylor Lewan. I think he is really underappreciated by a large block of fans here for the kind of player he's been for this team. Now, 2 of the last 3 years have been upsetting because he's been hurt. But I don't think that's because of a lack of preparation on his part. I think he's a guy who's worked hard. But there is no way you can go into next season with him as one of your starting offensive linemen. He's missed 2 of the last 3 years. He's breaking down. I mean, the parts are coming off the car, all right? And so he knows that. There might be another team that gives him $3 million, $4 million, $5 million, I don't know what, but on a 1-year deal. But nobody's going to give him a big I mean, if somebody gives him a big guaranteed contract, they're desperate. And I don't say that because he can't play. I'm saying because you're desperate for a guy who's got some higher end skills and you're crossing your fingers, hoping and praying he stays healthy. And that's a really bad strategy. Hope is a terrible strategy. And so, look,
Right.
he knows the business side, and he knows he's done here in Tennessee. And for him, the decision is, do I want to play somewhere else? Do I want to try to get my body through another year? I mean, he's had concussions. He's had 2 ACLs. But somebody will pay him.
Yeah, they probably will. And William Young, he says it's a shot at the O-line coach that just got fired. I know that he was talking on Bussin' with the Boys how him and Carter didn't really see eye to eye and things like that. And especially in the beginning, he felt like Carter didn't really show a lot of respect for the players. Like it was more like a dictatorship or whatever. So maybe it was.
Carter had a tough assignment when he came here. He was replacing
Yeah.
Russ Grimm, a Hall of Fame offensive lineman, and Keith Carter had about a year of offensive line coaching under his belt. When he got hired, I thought he was completely unqualified for the job. Completely.
Yeah.
And I was tough on him. And I think largely he did a very good job here. Whenever the offensive line struggled, he usually got them together and functioning at a reasonable level. Now, Taylor, I don't know if you remember this, day one, Taylor challenged him. Day one, they were running some drill, and Taylor goes flying back and flops on his back and just clowning around on the football field. And so, Taylor challenged Keith Carter from the beginning, and I don't blame him, all right? Because when you replace Russ Grimm with that, qualification level, it's tough for guys to swallow. Now, you got to be a pro at some point as well. But I can see where that didn't work. And as I've said, I think Keith did a better job than I thought he would. And I wasn't all about firing Keith this year because to me, you fired a chef who you gave a can of garbage to cook with and complained that the meal wasn't any good.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you there. And I mean, everybody was hurt. It was just another injury riddled season. It to me, it was okay. I get it. Right. I mean, how much does luck play into it?
I think it plays. Look, there's some, when you're talking about ACLs and shoulders, broken legs, these types of injuries. Yeah. Okay. Tannehill's ankle. Okay. That had nothing to do with Ryan Tannehill. Nothing. Had everything to do with his offensive line being terrible. So that's part of what got your quarterback hurt, is not having good enough players. But what Vrabel harped on, and you can say it's deflecting from his staff, but he really put the onus on the players to be in a position to play at a fast level without getting hurt. And he's talking about soft tissue injuries. The line he used I thought was very interesting is, do you want a callus or do you want a blister? Because we all know you work, you can get your hands, if you're going to work in your yard a lot, you get your hands calloused so that every time you rake, you don't wind up with blisters. But some guys, the moment they get a blister, you're going to back off until your hands are good again, and then you're going to start again. And what's going to happen as soon as you get started again? You get another blister. And so that was kind of the onus. He is, I think, because a lot of these guys nowadays have their own training staff in the summer. They don't do necessarily the team stuff. They may have the team workout, but they've got their own people doing their stuff. All right. They're on their own agenda. And then they get there and they pull a muscle in camp. I mean, how many times do you see it first week of camp? A lot. Too much here.
Yeah.
And so, I think Vrabel's, for the soft tissue injuries, has put the challenge on the players. And I think that was an interesting way to go, because I thought that was a clear shot across the bow from him.
And even I remember they interviewed Kevin Byard after one of the last few losses, and he said something like, I thought I had a video of it, but I might have already deleted it in my thing here. But he said something about he's never even seen anything like it. Even he's in the locker room saying, I don't know what the hell's going on. You know what I mean? I've never seen anything like it all my years on this team, 2 years in a row. So, yeah, I mean, and Vrabel might be right there, maybe some of these guys are not putting in the work off the field as well.
Well, I don't know if it's not putting in the work, but working in the right way. Understand?
Okay.
It's the way you prepare. There's different ways to prepare. Do you want, okay, we talked about the blister or the callus. Do you want to be a stock car or do you want to be an Indy car? All right. Because in football, you got to be a stock car, right? John Ross is an Indy car. He's in the freaking pits all the time getting work done. Right?
Yeah.
You need a car that can out there and take damage.
Right.
Because that's what football is. It's damage. And so they need to be able to perform at a really fast level and a really physical level and keep moving forward. You can't win. There's an old saying, you can't make the club in the tub.
And let's kind of segue into Ryan Tannehill. It's the big question. It was a question last offseason, with the whole Aaron Rodgers buying property in Brentwood or wherever it was, and all this type of stuff. And now you hear the Brady rumors. I was surprised that Ian Rappaport put that out about.
He didn't really source anything. He just kind of said these are the teams that will be in play. It was a little irresponsible, right?
Yeah, I just thought it was kind of like a throwaway tweet. You know what I mean? Like, maybe he didn't have much that day. He's just seeing what'll stick or something. But I mean, there could be a little bit of merit to it.
I mean, look, it's easy to say the Raiders because of Josh McDaniels. It's easy to say the Titans because of Vrabel. And it's easy to say the 49ers because that was his favorite team growing up. Weren't those the three teams he mentioned?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if it was the Dolphins because you'd already had that mentioned before.
Yeah. And then you had I heard something about Trey Lance, which I've not even seen the tweet about that. But
it just has fingers crossed. But
on
it could mean a million things. But look, I think it makes a lot of sense to explore because nobody knows Trey Lance better for the Titans than Rand Carthon's going to know, right?
Right.
He's got 2 years left on his rookie contract. So if you waive Tannehill, all right, you'd save $18 million. And then you bring in this guy on his rookie deal. And I think his cap number the next 2 years is like $9-10 million. So you're still at a plus. You're still at like a +8 there. All right. I don't know if the kid can play or not, but financially it would work out. And if you think he's the guy for the next 10-12 years, then you're set. So I think that's a conversation worth having. It might be a really short conversation. Rand might be like, no, he's not the stuff. And he might say, you know what? We really need to think about this.
Yeah.
And so it would be interesting because I think mathematically there's a lot of things that say, hey, this would be pretty good.
Yeah, and we haven't seen a lot of Trey Lance because, I mean, he was hurt.
He got hurt.
The first game, screwed up my fantasy for the first few weeks because I had drafted him. Just kind of took a flyer on him because I'd waited a long time for a quarterback. But, who really knows? And with Tannehill, it's hard to judge him this season just because he didn't have anything. I mean, no offensive line. I mean, Burks, he was there the latter half of the season. I say, he started finally, but he had the concussion where he was hitting the end zone. That dirty hit, they didn't call the flag on or anything. But, it's hard to judge Tannehill's season for me just because one thing, he was hurt. The next thing, the offensive line was just complete crap. The receivers, he didn't have any speed. That's what Vrabel's talking about.
He's speed. Right. He is. I mean, when you're touting Rossi McMath coming back, I mean, the guy had 2 career catches coming in, and people thought he was going to reinvent the Titans offense. He never did squat for LSU. And there's this thought that Rossi McMath. Guys, maybe Rossi McMath becomes a role player at some point, but he's not even Khalif Raymond at this point. I'd love to have Khalif Raymond back at this point. That guy could at least go
Yeah.
and catch the football. He's done well in Detroit, but
He really has.
he's got to roll. He's got to roll. He runs like 15 routes a game. Go deep. But yeah, I mean, he did not have the pieces. I thought, and like I've been tough on Tannehill at times. I thought he played pretty well this year in adverse situations. I thought he was certainly better than he was a year ago. And I was anxious to see him back in the playoffs to see if he could actually deliver in the postseason, because he still hasn't done it. And so that was upsetting. And you have to wonder what the organization thinks at this point, about, do they believe in him? Do they want to go forward? Do they want to do something else? I mean, now you've got a whole nother big opinion in the mix. But to me, that's the first thing that Ryan Carthon's got to square is, what are we doing with Ryan Tannehill? Because if you're bringing him back, and he's under contract, as Vrabel says, but if you're bringing him back, I think you've got to extend him by at least a year, because you've got to get his cap number down. All right. And I don't like going into it saying, well, we got him on one more year. I mean, either you're going to change quarterbacks or you're not. All right. If you're bringing him back, it's with the expectation that you're going to win some freaking games. All right. And you're not going to be picking 11th again. All right. So if you're going to change quarterbacks, picking 11th, kind of now is the time. That's my opinion. But if you want to bring Tannehill back, and I have no problem bringing Tannehill back, because like I said, I thought he played pretty well this year. I certainly don't put this season on him, but he's what we've always said. And he's just like Dak Prescott and a lot of these other guys. When everything is good around him, he's pretty good, but he's not good enough to drag the whole thing across the finish line. And so you got to, I mean, look, how good is Brock Purdy? I don't know. I do know this. With that really good team around him, he's really good. How good is Jalen Hurts? Well, last year, he was kind of crappy to me.
Yeah.
I wasn't convinced. All of a sudden, he's got Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and Miles Austin, or what's his name?
Goddard, the tight end.
Yeah. And then he's got one of the top 3 offensive lines in the league. And that's the biggest key. Miles Sanders. He's got one of the top offensive lines in the league in front of him. Yeah, he looks like an MVP candidate. Okay. You put a lot, and I'm not taking anything away from Jalen Hurts. I'm just saying he is in a really good situation, and he had not shown before the ability to drag a team across the line and to elevate everyone. Everything is good around him. The moment it wasn't, they lost 2 games. All right.
Yeah.
They lost Lane Johnson, had some other guys dinged, and they lost some games. And so there's a lot of quarterbacks like that. There's the Mahomes and Burrows aren't always out there. I think those guys are special. And, I don't know if Jalen Hurts or Brock Purdy are special. I just know that they're good with good teams around them, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with Tannehill. And you make a good point about that. Like, what is your motive for bringing him back? Obviously, if you're bringing him back
around him,
right? You don't want to be, if you're paying what you're paying Ryan Tannehill, you're not shooting for the 11th pick in the draft, right? I mean, if you want to get the 11th pick in the draft, just go, start Malik Willis or Josh Dobbs or something.
Yeah, JT brings up a good point that the Eagles scored 38 with Gardner Minshew. That's true.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
Gardner Minshew might be available.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind him as a backup.
Yeah, Minshew mania. But it'll be interesting to see what they do. It really will. I think there's a lot of things that are going to happen this offseason, and there's a lot of players that are going to be gone. It's going to be a different makeup.
There are every year. I mean, half the roster virtually is gone every year. So we'll make a lot of it. It's really no different. I mean, look, if they had gone to the playoffs this year, all right, even if they'd gone 10-7, it would say they didn't have this cataclysmic collapse, we would still be talking about cutting Bud Dupree, right? We'd still be talking about cutting Zach Cunningham. We'd still be talking about cutting or reworking Robert Woods' deal. We'd still be talking about Ryan Tannehill and what happens with him next. We'd be having all the same conversations about all these guys. The record doesn't do anything to change the math. All right. The math and the production and the availability. The numbers don't change those things. We are having the same conversations. Everybody thinks, oh, well, because of this, and what the record is, we have all this massive change. No, the math dictates the change.
And real quick, we won't spend a lot of time on Malik Willis, but what do you think the Titans' plans are for Malik Willis moving forward? Do you see him eventually becoming starting material in the NFL?
No, I don't.
I don't either.
I hope he does. I hope he goes to the Hall of Fame. Because I always, I'm not actively rooting against anybody. And look, I don't think the Titans did him any favors, because when they put him out there, they made him do their stuff. And especially when you knew he was going to start a few weeks when Tannehill was down, why didn't you just run a ton of read option and RPOs?
Yes.
'Cause that's what he's good at. That's what he's comfortable with. But instead, you want him to drop back, read the field, find who's open, and he's not prepared to do that. He can't read, recognize, and rip it at this point, because he doesn't trust what he's seeing, because it's all still happening too fast for him. It's not anything he's had to do before. You know what he is? He's Tim Tebow. He can run around the field, make plays, chuck it deep, right now. But as far as doing all these things to run an NFL offense, he needs a lot more work. He looked like Titans Fox just said Malik Willis is the Titans Tim Tebow.
There you go.
But it's going to take a long time. I think this guy passed away, so I hate bringing him up. Remember Tavares Jefferson?
Yeah.
That's who he reminds me of. And I think maybe, and Tavares Jefferson ended up starting for a year or two. Maybe he can be a Tavares Jefferson someday. I think he'd be a great slot back. I don't know if you could convince him to do it. Tavares Jackson. That's right.
Yeah.
The Vikings and then the Seahawks.
Yeah.
Second round pick. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you could turn him into a slot like Julian Edelman or something, I think he could be great. But I don't know if you could convince him of that. I just don't know if he's, you see the quarterbacks and what they've got to offer as rookies, even the ones who struggle, and it's way better than that. Way better than that. I mean, Trevor Lawrence had a terrible rookie year playing for the clown show in Jacksonville, and he was still way better than that. We all had our fingers crossed every time he let the ball go, right? Nobody felt good.
Yeah.
I had some hope when he came in that Chargers game for that one drive, because he looked like a different guy. He fired two passes right off. I think it was to Robert Woods and NWI. He was like, zap, zap. And then he scrambled with his head up and he got a first down. I was like, hey, that looks pretty good. And then he started the next week and looked like Malik. And so I don't know.
There was the first half of the Kansas City game.
Yeah.
I thought they did a good job with Malik. They were running him out.
They were running the ball.
Options. Yeah. Yeah. They were calling good plays for him. And then the second half, totally different game plan.
Yep.
It's like the tale of the season all season,
Like I said, they didn't do him any favors. That's for sure. And so I'm probably too tough on him.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. What do you think of Josh Dobbs as a backup? If Malik Willis is not, in the picture, what do you see Dobbs as an adequate backup? A number two quarterback?
I think Dobbs can come in and run an NFL offense. I don't think he's a starter, but you can put him in there and you're not going to be worried that he's going to go out there and embarrass you. He didn't embarrass you. Now, he made a terrible decision on the fourth down throw. All right.
Yeah.
It was a terrible play call that led to the fumble that lost the game. Don't get me started on that play call.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable, unfathomable that that's the play they decided to do. But they did. But like I said, if you told me next year, hey, Tanny's down for a week, Dobbs has got to go start, I'd say, all right, go get him. Where this year, Malik's got to start. Oh, Jesus. Let's see what happens. See if they can find a way to scrape out a W.
Right. And I mean, they almost did. I think it was the KC game. That was unbelievable how that game unfolded.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like how bad the second half was with the offense. I mean, the defense it was a typical Mike Vrabel injury riddled defense that just happened to muster up whatever they could and almost beat a world beater.
Yeah, I remember once they went to overtime, they're like, oh man, they're never going to score.
Right. Oh, I knew it was over then.
Yeah. So how long is it going to take? That was all.
And thank you everybody in the chat. I see all your comments and stuff. If you got any questions for Cory, we're going to go probably about another 15 minutes. If you got any questions for Cory, please put them in the chat. We'll throw them up on the screen here in a few minutes. I do want to get into, the next biggest topic of the times for the Titans right now, the offensive coordinator search. Obviously, I think they're going to go with Tim Kelly. You're kind of on that same vein as far as that goes. What do you think of Tim Kelly? Now, I put it together a little graphic earlier today. This is kind of his history as an offensive coordinator in a nutshell. 2019 with the Texans, total offense 13th. Same in 2020, 13th. Now, keep in mind, both those years he had Deshaun Watson.
Yep.
2021, he has Davis Mills as a rookie. They're 32nd.
Yep.
He was credited with Davis Mills kind of overperforming as a rookie. He
torched the Titans that one game.
He did, and Tim Kelly, they praised him for the way Mills was playing that season.
And let's face it, Mills has gotten worse since Kelly left.
That is true. Very true. So, what do you think about Tim Kelly if they bring him on? What do you think?
I think if he doesn't get better offensive line play, he's going to be terrible. All right?
Yeah.
Look, Vrabel likes people he trusts and who he's worked with before. We see it over and over and over again. So I'll be surprised if he goes outside the organization to bring somebody in. I haven't heard of a candidate yet. Didn't Bieniemy and Nagy both pretty much say they aren't interested?
I think so. I know Bieniemy did. I'm not sure about Nagy. I've heard some things about Nagy though, but
yeah. So I mean, they would have been the strongest candidates. I mean, I don't know if London is gonna wow anybody. The Falcons quarterbacks coach, but he's another guy who's worked with Vrabel in Houston. So who knows? I mean, and again, whoever the OC is going to be is going to run the game that Mike Vrabel wants to play. And that's pound people with the running game, control the clock, hit them with shock plays, play defense, create game-changing turnovers. He just needs the roster to do it with. When I first heard Bieniemy and Nagy candidates, I was like, okay, maybe they're going, they're willing to say, hey, we need to do things a little bit differently. I'm not so sure that's the case. I think Vrabel, he talked about it in a season-ending presser. He believes what he believes. And if you don't like it, you need a different head coach, all right? But he's going to hire the offensive coordinator who's going to call the game that he wants called. And whether it's Tim Kelly or somebody else, it may not be the exact same. And look, we could say the same thing about Arthur Smith and Todd Downing. Arthur does cartwheels around Todd Downing, obviously. But he also had a much better offensive line. So, Arthur was pretty sharp, and that's why he's a head coach right now. So it'll be interesting to see who it is. All I know is we haven't heard any names yet that have us going, oh, they got to go get this guy. He reinvented the offensive wheel.
Right. And there's a lot of names being thrown out there. You mentioned Charles London from Atlanta. Obviously Vrabel knows him very well.
Mm.
The two worked together 4 years, assistant coaches with the Texans, 2014 to 17. He was the running backs coach during that time. Vrabel was the linebackers coach and defensive coordinator. He spent the last 2 seasons working under Smith, the quarterback coach of the Falcons. So, maybe there's some thought there as far as kind of bringing on a Arthur Smith protege type of thing. Obviously, and like you said, the offensive line was way better then, but Arthur Smith is definitely a much more capable play caller than Todd Downing. Any moron could see that. I would think.
Here I am.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see, man. But I just have this ominous feeling that Tim Kelly is going to be the guy. I don't know, man. I don't. And the thing is, I hear a lot of people dogging it and this and that. I mean, is it the right move? Is it the wrong move? I don't know. I mean, Kelly does have some experience. He's the way I look at it is anybody has to be better than Downing, right? I mean, I don't know.
He just always seemed to. I mean, what's crazy about Downing is he finally. I mean, he called a really good game in Green Bay, and then
he did,
and just blows it afterwards. Write this down, though. All right, this is very important. Okay. The X's and the O's will never equal the Jimmies and the Joes. All right,
right.
The players will always outweigh the scheme. And that's what we keep getting back to when we talk about offensive line play, when we talk about speed on the outside. We can talk about offensive coordinator till we're blue in the face. Doesn't matter till they get those areas fixed. All right?
Right.
You get those areas fixed, and there's a lot of guys who are going to be able to call good plays. I mean, Terry Robisky in his worst year was better than the Titans were this year.
That's terrible. That's pretty bad. I saw a comment back here. Ashton said, "I've heard Frank Reich's name put out there.
People throw it out there, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see that. I don't see.
He believes in running the football, right?
Does he though? He didn't use Taylor much.
Well, he did. And then the offensive line was terrible, and they went to that whole run and shoot thing. They tried going to the whatever they called it, and Ryan was terrible. He was searching because their offensive line was so bad. He was trying to find some way to fix it. But I mean, before this year, he was all about pounding Jonathan Taylor. I mean, Taylor had 1,800 yards last year, so he's all about running the football and going play action. And look, a lot of that is dictated by personnel. When you got Patrick Mahomes, you can line up in the shotgun or Justin Herbert and throw it 50 times a game. When you got Ryan Tannehill, you throw it 30. It's just that simple.
And what do you, as far as Vrabel, the team this year and last year, obviously we had more weapons last year, even though they were hurt. I mean, you had Julio, you had AJ. They were hurt, but they did play at times. I mean, it seemed like it was either AJ was either in there or Julio was in there.
Or neither of them.
Or neither of them. Very seldomly, I think it was 1 or 2 games where they were actually both on the field
The number of snaps, I remember it was like when you took the whole season, the percentage was minuscule. It was terrible.
Right. And I hear a lot of people calling for Vrabel's job, and I just, to me, it's mind blowing to me. Like, I get it. I think it's more of just a fan thing. Like, you're mad at how the season went, but the guy won the NFL Coach of the Year the previous year.
What happened to Doug Peterson in Philly? He won the Super Bowl and got fired.
That's true. Very true. But in your opinion, do you think Vrabel is the right head coach for this team right now?
Look, I mean, I guess that depends on what you want your team to be. I think that's the bigger question. What do you want your team to be? And that's a question for Amy Adams Strunk, because she's the one calling the shots. What do you want your team to be? I know this. Mike Vrabel's teams are prepared. Okay. There's only one time I recall seeing them come unraveled in his time here, and that was that Jacksonville game this year. And that was the week that J-Rob got fired.
Yeah.
He knows the rules inside out. His record on long rest is incredible. So he's able to take advantage of extra opportunity to prepare. Does that mean he's perfect? No. But I think he's a good head coach who's been dissatisfied with his roster for a long time. And now he's going to play a bigger role in it. And we'll see if he can make the difference that he thinks he can.
That's interesting. You know, I mean, he probably will play a bigger role in it. And this will be this could be a big turning point for the franchise. Either you're going to keep collapsing or you keep growing, you know?
Well, it's interesting because they fired Malarkey off of a playoff season, right? Because they thought Vrabel was the guy to take him to the Super Bowl. And so, you know, why are we surprised that, you know, with where they are with J-Rob, that they just said, you know what, this is good, but we want to go to the Super Bowl, and we don't think we're getting closer to that. So it's not. I mean, it's all about getting to the Super Bowl and figuring out if a guy is the guy to do it or not. And so, you know, from that aspect, I you know, that move doesn't surprise me, and I understand where they were coming from.
We do have a couple questions for you in the chat.
Okay.
If you guys have any questions, we'll get through a few questions and we're going to wrap it up. And let me scroll up here and see. Aiden had a question. He said, Corey, do you think Rand Carthon knows Vrabel is a good head coach, and will Rand Carthon ever consider to fire Vrabel if he wants his own guy?
Okay. Well, I think Vrabel and Carthon have to know each other some. They've both been around the league too long to not run into each other at some point. I think they share traditional football values, and I think that that's going to allow them to communicate well with each other and agree on the types of guys that they want to bring in. You know, that again, one of the things I'm most excited about this hire is it's not a lackey. It's bringing in a dude. I think Rand Carthon's a dude at this position. And Vrabel has said, I can work with this guy. We believe in the same stuff. We're going to get this done together. As for firing Vrabel, the way this structure is set up, I do not believe Carthon has the power to fire the head coach. That would be my guess. That's one of the questions that can be answered, right? I don't know. I don't know if Rand Carthon's going to answer that question on Friday or not. But when you want them to come to a consensus and a collaboration on things, and they're both reporting to the head coach, to the owner, because that's what Amy said, they will both report to her. It says she would be the one to fire either one of them. So I don't think Vrabel has to look over his shoulder unless he thinks Carthon has a better relationship with Amy and can convince her Vrabel needs to go because it's her decision.
And Al Pierce, the good Reverend Al Pierce, he says, and we kind of hit on this already, really, but what do you think is the cause of the injuries? I guess maybe in a overall, is there a fix to it? I mean, what do you do?
Well, I mean, look, we've asked Mike Vrabel about this till we're blue in the face, and they've tried a lot of different things. And I think, you know, I think you've got to go to some teams who've, number one, had a lot of success staying healthy the last 2 or 3 years. And you got to say, what are you doing? All right. And you've got to try to implement some of those things. I think he's challenging the players this offseason to work out in a way that prepares them to power through. I said everybody should be out working out with Kevin Byard at Lipscomb or Mount Juliet or wherever he's working out. Because you know how many games Kevin Byard has missed in 7 years? 0. All right. Kevin Byard doesn't miss games. You know, Ben Jones hasn't missed a lot of games. There's some guys who don't miss a lot of games, and the younger players need to emulate those guys and say, how do you prepare? Because I need to do this to prepare. And then the other thing they can do is stop signing injured players. okay? Because in the NFL, a lot of injuries lead to the next injury, all right? Because you overcompensate on something else because something else is hurting. How many pitchers blow out their shoulders in baseball because they have a leg injury? That's all
Right.
part of it. So I think you're going to see them stop signing so many injured players. I mean, I'll never forget when they signed Julio Jones, and I had Jared Stillman on Sports Extra, and we played a game called Over and Under, and I said, Julio Jones, over or under 8 practices this year. And it sounded like a joke, but it was probably pretty close to reality. All right. Because that guy's been nothing but hurt for the last 5-10 years. And guess what? He came here and was hurt forever. Bud Dupree, I love Bud Dupree. So don't get me started on Bud Dupree. I love Bud Dupree. But the simple fact is, he came here off of an ACL, and he has not been able to stay healthy. And you can't pay $60 million to a guy who can't stay on the field. 2 hip injuries and a torn pec, there's no way he can be back. And so you gotta bring more healthy players in. There's only so many miles on the tires, and you just have to be willing to say this is what we're gonna do.
William Young says, Cory, should the Titans draft O-line?
William Young wants to know if the Titans should draft an offensive lineman or a wide receiver in the first round. And I will just say this. We need to see
Well, I think we lost them there. Here, we'll take him out for a minute. Looks like we lost signal from Cory there. Anyways, thank you for all the comments, guys. I don't know what happened. His video dropped out there. Maybe he'll pop back in here. Let me remove him from the studio, and then maybe he can jump back in. Here we go. Technical difficulties, always something. And there is a lot of storm. There's some storms going on tonight in Nashville, so that could be something that's happened there. But maybe he'll come back in here, guys. But thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. There's been 70, 80 people in the building the whole night. So I really appreciate everybody tonight. Y'all have been awesome. It's been a great show so far. Let's get to some of your comments. Sorry I haven't been able to get to a lot of your comments tonight. I just kind of wanted to pick Cory's brain and kind of get him to answer some of your questions and things like that. The guy is awesome, and he's been so gracious to come on the show. This is his 3rd time on the show. Every time I've asked him, he's like, sure, man, just whenever, so it's the guy he loves to talk sports, and that's what he loves to do. He's awesome in that respect. So let's go. We'll still get to some of your questions here. Will we keep Jamarco Jones? I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on what type of depth we have at the position. I don't think we will. Personally, I don't think we will. He didn't bring much to the table. He got injured. I just don't see it happening unless they're just going to keep him strictly as a depth piece or something like that. Let me send Cory a message real quick on here. Sorry, guys. Let's see. Apologize for that. Okay. All right. I just sent him another message. We'll see if he'll pop back in there. I think we were about to kind of come to an end anyways, but we'll get to more of your comments here. Who do we hopefully resign? Who do we let go in free agency? Well, Cory talked about a few things. I know Bud Dupree is more than likely going to be gone. Lewan's going to be gone. You got players like Cunningham. You can save $14 million. He should be gone. Who else? Let me know in the chat too. I know some of you guys kind of know some of those players that have the big contracts that are going to be gone. Robert Woods, he's going to cost like $15 million. He'll be gone. There's some ways where the Titans can save quite a few $1 million, millions of dollars as far as that goes. But yeah, Cory just messaged me. He's not going to be able to come back on. But we appreciate the time. He spent an hour with us. Anyway, so that was awesome. On his part. So sorry, I sent him a message there. Trey Lance, I've heard the Trey Lance rumors. I don't know much about Trey Lance. Like we haven't really seen much of Trey Lance. Is he skilled? Is he, he was great in college. The dude's got a world of talent. But we just haven't seen him much in the NFL yet. You know what I mean? It's really hard to. He got hurt. Do we want to bring in a guy who's injury prone? And Cory was just talking about that. You know what I mean? Do you think the grass and Nissan is causing the injuries? Very well could be. I've heard some of the players complain about the grass. I have heard that before. And we've even heard it. One of our sources talked about how the players were complaining about the grass too. Travy, yeah, Daly never missed. Imagine that, right? Daly was our healthy of offensive lineman. MPF was hurt too here and there. Ben Jones obviously was hurt. I guess Nate Davis never missed this season, did he? Nate Davis missed this season too. So he missed a couple games. So yeah, I mean, Dennis Daly was literally our healthiest offensive lineman, just crazy. Let's see. Dupree, I think so. I definitely think so. I don't see why there's any reason they would keep Dennis or keep Dupree. Just no reason at all. If they do, it's just dumb. I mean, the guy cannot stay on the field. When he's on the field, does he make the defense better? Yeah, I think so. But I mean, he can't stay healthy. And it's the same with, look, I'm not saying, cut Fulton or anything like that, because who are you going to replace him with? But Fulton, it's the same thing with Christian Fulton. Christian Fulton cannot stay healthy. He just can't. And it's getting pretty irritating. To me, it's getting pretty irritating. Like, players like Fulton and stuff like that. And with Fulton, a lot of times it's those soft tissue injuries that Mike Vrabel was talking about and everything. And it's just hard to gauge some of these guys. You know what I mean? It's hard to gauge some of these guys. Let's see here. Landry will be back next year. That will be big. Yes, that's right, man. And oftentimes I forget about Landry. He will be back next year, and that will be huge for the Titans. That really will, to have a guy like that back next year. A shame what happened to him. Just a shame all that happened. Sin City Titan, what's up, brother? How you doing, man? It's all right. Send me a text later, man. Who do you think wide receiver, offensive tackle? And William asked us earlier. I think offensive tackle, you have to go tackle. Unless you pick up somebody in free agency, you got to go tackle. There's 2 or 3 guys, the Strastowski or whatever, from Northwestern, and then you got the guy from Ohio State. I really like the guy from Ohio State. I think if he's there, you got to get him. It's a no-brainer. I think he's a guy, he's nasty on the offensive line. I think he's a guy who can be your offensive lineman for your offensive tackle, your left tackle for the next decade, possibly. A guy like that, you don't get an opportunity yet. You're not going to find anybody in free agency that's going to have the longevity that he has, that he could potentially have. And I think you got to pick up a guy like that, or the guy from Northwestern, Paris Johnson from Ohio State. Really, really like Paris Johnson. I think if he's available, you go get him. Al Pierce says tighten up. And tighten up that like button. Yes, please hit that like button. We've had over 70 people in the building. Hope we can get to 100 likes. Resign the King. David Long Jr., he's another guy. Yeah, I mean, he's another guy that's a free agent. I think you got to keep Long. I really do. I love David Long Jr. If he can stay healthy, I think you got to give him one more year to see if he can stay healthy or if he's another player that has the injury bug. Paris from Ohio State. Yep. So Paris Johnson Jr. is a beast. Yes. I really like that guy. I think if he's available, you got to pick him up. I mean, I just think you do. I mean, we've all seen what a crappy offensive line gets you, and it gets you nothing. You know, I think football is a game that's won in the trenches. It's a saying that's as old as the game. I think you got to get a guy. You got to pick up an offensive tackle in the first round. I think it's a no-brainer. Unless you go out and Rand Carthon's like, look, we're going to go out and pick up one of these. There's a few good offensive tackles who are going to be free agents. You know, you go out and pick up an offensive tackle. You go out and you pick up a guard. You could potentially get a pretty decent guard in the second round. There's the guy Voorhees that's could slip to the second round. I think you got to get somebody to replace Aaron Brewer. I'm not an Aaron Brewer fan at all. He's too small. He gets blown up every other play. I'm just not cool with Brewer as a starter. Okay, as a backup, okay. He's all right. As a starter, absolutely not. He's not an NFL starter. He's too small. If he was bigger, if he put on some weight, if he put on 20, 30 pounds, he's got good technique, you know. He might be all right, but I think here is my plan, all right, for the draft. Go get Paris Johnson or the other dude from Northwestern. No brainer in my opinion. Draft a wide receiver in the second round or a guard in the. I think you got to go wide receiver in the second round if you pick up a tackle in the first round. Jalen Hyatt could be available in the second round at the number 11th pick. If Jalen Hyatt is available, you pick up Jalen Hyatt. That's my opinion in the second round. There's some other guys that could be available too, that could be available in the second round and two. So you go pick up that, and then you pick up a guard in free agency to replace Brewer. So tackle in the first round, wide receiver in the second, pick up a guard in free agency. Also, you're going to have to pick up another inside linebacker too to replace Cunningham, depending on what they do with Long too. You know what I mean? So anyways, guys, we're going to get on out of here. I thank you so much for tuning in tonight. We appreciate you very much. Thank you so much again to Cory for coming on the show, man. He's so gracious with his time. I really appreciate you guys so much. Y'all have killed it for me this season. We're going to keep rolling this off season, guys. We're going to bring Draft Brian on. We're going to do the mock drafts. We're going to try and get Broshmo. If you guys haven't checked out Broshmo, you need to go check him out on YouTube. He's got a ton of followers on YouTube. Big draft guy. We might even have him and Draft Brian come on and just hash it out. We'll do a bunch of kind of draft simulations, get you guys involved. We're going to do a fan draft, so where you guys make the picks. We'll do consensus picks for each pick, things like that. You know what I mean? It's going to be a lot of fun this offseason. It's going to be fun as a whole. You know, we got a lot going on this offseason with the Titans. There's going to be a lot of news coming out. We'll be breaking news. We broke this earlier today about Rand Carthon. One of the from what we were hearing at the Tighten Up O Network, one of the deciding factors in hiring Rand Carthon was he told Amy Adams that he doesn't think we need to go through a complete rebuild to win a Super Bowl in Tennessee. So that was something we heard today from one of our sources. And basically he's saying, look, you know, we don't have to rebuild. We got a good nucleus here. We got Derrick Henry, Kevin Byard, and Jeffrey Simmons. So I think he's kind of under an impression like, hey, let's retool. Let's make some right decisions, and let's get this thing going again. Let's get this winning franchise back on its feet, and kind of move on from this 7-win season and get this damn thing going again. And I think he can. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to let Jalen Fly take us out. He'll be back on the show too. Tighten up. Let's go.
Oh, how y'all doing? This is Jalen Fly, aka the Mountain Mover. Make sure y'all follow my movement. But in the meantime, check us out. I need y'all to like and subscribe because this is Titans Rossi. Oh, let's go.